This presentation is called After the Dust Settles. It's based on an article I wrote for Supply Chain Management Review in 2020. And although it's based on, we're a couple of years old, it still is relevant today because we're still in a post-COVID world, and I think we will be for quite some time. With that, I'm going to get started, and hopefully you'll enjoy the presentation as we move along, and maybe learn something. First of all, I want to start out by saying that, in my opinion at least, COVID-19 was not a black swan event. You've heard that people say that. I don't really believe it was, mainly because that black swans are really what they call unknown unknowns. And we have, humans have been subject to pandemics for millennia. And we've had the bubonic plague, we've had Spanish flu in the last century, COVID-19 this century, but we also had a lot of other pandemics along the way. So it really hasn't been something that we're used to, or we are used to. And in fact, Bill Gates predicted a worldwide pandemic in his 2014 TED Talk. And unfortunately, while he was advocating expanding our ability to work with pandemics, the world and countries started defunding their ability to deal with the pandemic. So by 2020, when it really hit, the world really was unprepared. Unfortunately, we had some wonderful technology, and we're able to in a fairly short time beat it, but it really played a terrible cost. It really was a terrible cost on overall world economics, etc. However, at the same time, COVID was an accelerant for change. When we look at things that were viewed once as trends, now they matured practically overnight. We developed technology-enabled the workforce through AI, digital transformation. We were able to work from home and see that as that's really here to stay. The rise of teleconferencing, things like Zoom and the other teleconferencing software packages. And also we were able to see a tremendous increase in e-commerce. It really did some serious damage to many companies, brick and mortar retailers that were really caught up in caught short by it, but other organizations did very well. Some of them are still on life support, but and I don't know whether or not they're going to survive. But things like Bed Bath and Beyond and things and other organizations. But what COVID-19 proved were that supply chain priorities were misaligned. In the past 3 to 4 decades, we focused on cost reduction in terms of just in time, things like that. But which was great. But what we really should have been focusing on was risk reduction and minimizing our exposure to risk. We focused on efficiency when we should have been focusing on being as effective as possible. And we also focused on inventory visibility and inventory accuracy when we really should have been focusing on supply chain visibility. We found out that the supply chains were fragile, and what we really needed to do was inject resiliency and agility into the supply chain. Relationships, this is what I found was interesting. Relationships with customers and suppliers were very important. And those companies that had strong relationships with their customers and suppliers fared much better during during COVID and during the shutdowns and everything, because they were able to suppliers were able to get better terms, and were able to get paid faster from their customers that supported them. There was if you had trust in that relationship, it really bonded the organizations together, because customers realized they needed their suppliers, and suppliers realized that they needed their customers. And we just found out that supply chain models were not as sophisticated as we thought. And so when we look at things, we really need to look at characteristics of in the post-COVID world, and look at the fact that the supply chains really need to be resilient and agile in order to adapt to challenges, changes, opportunities, and threats. And in order to do this, I've developed 8 recommendations, and they're arranged from fairly broad to very specific recommendations. The first one is to, within your supply chain or within your company, I'll use those terms interchangeably in this presentation, create a vision and culture where you get true end-to-end visibility. Also leverage, in order to do that, you need to leverage technology that's compatible with the vision and culture that you're creating. You need to implement continuous improvement, emphasize planning over forecasting, segment supplier and customer bases, develop a supply chain risk analysis plan, transition from purchasing to procurement, and finally, to implement sales and operations planning. So let's take a look at these 8 things in a little bit more detail, and to give more of a feel of what I mean by it. First of all, let's talk about what is a vision. A vision in the short term, the short answer is it's what few companies have, but all companies need. It's really a statement of aspiration. It's what we want our company to be. It's the desired state. And it also should be short, clear, and to the point. One of my favorite ones is a small company that's known as Life is Good. This company started out in the mid-90s as by 2 brothers who literally sold T-shirts out of the back of their car. And they developed this into a company that's growing a lot. It's got the e-commerce side of it. It also has retail stores. In fact, here I live on St. Simon's Island in Georgia, and the next island down on Jekyll Island, there is a Life is Good store. And so it's kind of neat, because I really like their stuff. But their vision is simply this: to spread the power of optimism. And I thought that was really cool, because nowhere in there does it say, we're going to be the biggest, the best, the most profitable, or whatever. We just want to spread the power of optimism. And it's interesting, because 10% of their profits are given away to charities and nonprofits that deal with children, et cetera. And it's really, I always thought it was very, very good. But the vision should also be shared with everyone, whether it's internally through the company and external to their customers and suppliers as well. Also, we'll talk about what is culture. And culture is simply the sum of the organization's beliefs and behaviors. And I like to say it's how people act when the boss isn't around. Do they sit around talking, put their feet up on their desks and read the newspaper, or are they continuing to work and it doesn't really matter where the boss is, because you have something to do, you're doing it, you enjoy what you're doing, and you want to improve the operation. Also, we want to talk in terms of end-to-end visibility. And what is that? End-to-end visibility is really something that was an aspirational thing for a long time, but it's with digitization and digital transformation, it's really become a reality. I mean, it's the ability to track material from the time it's ordered to when it's consumed, used, sold, and delivered to a customer. And it's also, not even to be able to track it at the tier 1 level, but also if you can really get, if you start working with your customers and your suppliers and where you are in the supply chain, you can deal with the tier 2 and possibly even tier 3 down the road as well, so that you can really get true end-to-end visibility. You should be able to get any point, that means any point in the supply chain, and you should be able to track things by serial number, lot number, date code, item, SKU, etc. And like I said, it's best realized through digital transformation. That's really made the digitization of the supply chain has really made end-to-end visibility a reality in a lot of companies. You need to leverage your auto ID, barcoding to 2D RF tags, etc. Also, you need to be able to work with your, have transparency in your operations and processes, not only within your own operations and processes, but you need to develop the relationships with your suppliers and customers to be able to track material through those channels as well, integrating your databases and also sharing your KPIs, your key performance indicators. So the requirements of this are really several things involved. You need to have an inclusive, participative culture. You need to embrace change and have a free exchange of ideas. It means you have to have free and open communication in all directions, up, down, and across. And and where your organization, you can actually have, there's no such thing as a bad idea. Maybe an unpopular one, but no such thing as a bad idea. It's also process driven. We have to eliminate silos within our organizations to do this. And we allow experimentation, learning, and even failure, so that we can, as we learn from our failures, we learn what to do and what not to do, etc. It really requires extensive organizational change management within the organization, because you have to be able to communicate early and often through extensive discussions with hourly employees, unions, and management. Everybody needs to know what's going on, and we have to develop trust at all levels. Change, and this is key, change must be viewed as an opportunity, not a threat to people. Because when you introduce change to an organization and you say, we're going to start doing X, Y, or Z, in most organizations nowadays, and this is to their detriment, the first thing that happens is, or people say, what how does this affect me? How does this affect my job? And what we need to be looking at is we need to be looking at change viewed as an opportunity for everyone to grow in an organization and not as a threat to jobs, et cetera. The next thing to do is to leverage technology. And this needs to be consistent. Again, the technology must be consistent with the vision, strategy, and culture of the organization. Need to combine commercial off-the-shelf software systems into an integrated supply chain management system, minimizing, and the reason you need commercial off-the-shelf as much as possible is you want to minimize customization because that does nothing but add cost. And you need to also integrate into software as a service and cloud services as well, so that you're leveraging your capabilities in the organization. Need to incorporate artificial intelligence in the decision-making process wherever possible, because what you want to be able to do is take the decisions that are routine decisions and have computers make those decisions possible, leaving the higher level judgmental decisions that require real expertise up to the humans to make those decisions. Needs to be transparent, driven by dashboards and KPIs that are accessible to everybody that needs to be access to them. And technology needs to be viewed within the organization as an investment rather than an expense. And so that we look at things in terms of developing a business case and that is subject to return on investment and payback analysis. And also we need to periodically not just develop one business case, but to periodically review it in order to make sure that it's still meeting the organization's needs. Because organizations change and priorities change and economies change. So as your business changes, you need to make sure that your technology is still meeting its needs. Basically, what you want to look at is something sort of a model like this, where you've got an integrated supply chain execution, leveraging AI that is generally has 6 parts of it, maybe more, maybe less, depending on your organization. But it should include a planning and forecasting system, an inventory management system, a procurement system, some sort of warehouse management system, transportation management system, and a routing and scheduling system. Something along those lines that in one of the best ways to do this is leveraging it in the form of a supply chain control tower, something along that line. Next thing to look at is implementing continuous improvement. And that's improving the product, services, and processes with both incremental and with breakthrough improvements, focusing on development on fundamentals of reducing cycle time and improving processes, providing company-wide training at all levels of the organization, at least to the utilizing to the level of what normally is like a yellow belt or green belt level, and utilizing the tools of lean management and Six Sigma. So, putting together that type of a continuous improvement or program throughout the company so that everybody in the organization understands it and is familiar with it, et cetera. And we need to make sure that the results get publicized so that people get to share in those successes, and also the things that maybe are not as successful, because we need to make sure that we understand and understand the what went wrong and why things went wrong, et cetera, so we can learn from it. We need to share tangible savings wherever possible and appropriate as well. Next thing is to emphasize planning over forecasting. And this what I mean by this is planning is the process of selecting strategies to achieve a goal based on assumptions for the future, using objective and forecast information. It explains a course of action and explains the strategic thinking around it. How does this fit into our strategy? Why are we doing this? And also identifies responsible parties, timing, and expected results. Whereas forecasting, while still necessary, forecasting is still looking at things using past and present data to create a model for the future based on assumptions and postulates. So, it's basically crunching numbers inside a forecasting program, which can help you provide a direction, but it's the planning that really sets the motion and et cetera. Because forecasting by itself is basically an educated guess. And in that case, forecasting by itself, there's two kinds of forecasts, as my friend Carol Patak loves to say. There are lucky forecasts and there are lousy forecasts. and so the thing is that you have to make sure, I will guarantee you, your forecasts are mostly the latter and fewer of the former. Next, we need to segment supplier and customer bases, because we all know that one size does not fit all. And yet we still, when your only tool is a hammer, all of your solutions look like nails. So we got to look at things in terms of what procurement examples are out there. And for example, in procurement, we can segment by using the Kraljic matrix. We can use ABC classification, and we can also deal with segment suppliers using supplier performance measures. Looking at customers and sales examples, we can look at, again, ABC classification there, profitability, demographics, and geography. So let's take a little bit of a peel back on this as well. Let's look at the Kraljic matrix. This was designed, I believe it was a paper written for the Harvard Business Review in 1982 by a man named Kraljic. I can't remember his first name right now, but he looked at it and he said, this is why academics and consultants love the Kraljic matrix, because they love the 2x2 format. And he said, okay, so if we look at an organization and we look at their profit, the impact that material has on profit, and we look at that from measure it from the low to high impact, and then we look at supply risk, low to high impact, we can look at, we can break this up into 4 categories. The low not area is called the non-critical items. These are standardized products. These are like nuts and bolts, the hardware, et cetera, the things that we have abundant supply of. And we can probably process this on a 3 bids and a buy or a reverse auction type of a program, and just kind of automate the purchasing process of this. As we move up and buy items that are there's still abundant supply, but it has more of an impact on profit. we get to the leveraged items. These are things that, again, are based on 3 bids and a buy, but they're more your traditional procurement type of item. But that still can be set up as more of an automated process. But when you start looking at things that have higher risk involved in it, low profit impact, but a higher risk, you run into these bottleneck items. And these are items that if you run out of them or you run into problems with supply, et cetera, they may not shut you down, but they can hurt you. They can slow processes down. And this is where you need to start developing relationships with suppliers, and deal with situations like that. And then once you get to the strategic, the high profit impact and high risk, these are the 3 to 5% or a small percentage anyway that could really shut you down. And what do you do in such situations like that in developing? And you need to definitely develop supplier relationships with these strategic items, because they're and long-term supplier relationships as well. In fact, working with suppliers to even come up with better mousetraps or better products, et cetera, because of that. Now, when you deal, you can also look at customer segmentation from the customer side, and you can look at things from the geographic, demographic, behavioral, or psychographic levels, and being able to look at what are your most profitable, your largest, and also to be able to break it down into different areas of geography and behavior, et cetera. Number 6 is developing a supply chain risk analysis plan. And to do this, you need to take about 5 or I think it's 5 steps here. Is develop an integrated team structure, and this is a team of, this team to put together your risk analysis needs to be made up of different areas within the organization, not just the supply chain, but the supply chain, production, sales, et cetera, to be able to develop an integrated team structure. This team then needs to develop a comprehensive list of the risks that are involved. And here you may want to break it up as far as internal risks, internal to the company, versus external risk outside of the company. You may also want to break it up as to the cause of the risks, as far as whether they're created by man-made risks or they're natural risks. So, for example, a fire within in a supplier's factory is, probably more of a man-made external situation, whereas the situation that happened several, I think it was back in the early in the 90s with in 2000s with flooding in Southeast Asia, where it affected a lot of technology plants. That's more of a external, but it's still but it's more of a naturally occurring situation, or occurring by nature. Need to then take this list of risks and calculate both the probability and its cost, to be able to look at the probability of happening and its total cost. Because what happens is, when you take the probability, multiply it by the cost, you get the actual impact of what that is. So if you've got a key supplier that is in Atlanta, Georgia, the fact that it's if it had an earthquake there, there's probably a very little, extremely low probability of an earthquake happening. But if the cost, but it could be devastating if it was there. Again, you look at the fact that while the probability of having a pandemic, while it's not nil, it's fairly low, but the cost could be extremely high. So the impact could therefore be fairly high as well. Once you've done that, then you need to, and calculated your list of risks and the impacts, et cetera, then you need to develop a mitigation strategy for each of these risks. And there's 4 mitigation strategies. There you can deal with accepting, because there's nothing you can do about it. You can transfer the risk, meaning that you can make it the responsibility of another party and say, okay, I'm going to insure this building for fire insurance or flood insurance or whatever I need. I can avoid the risk by totally eliminating it, wherever I can, or I can just really lessen the impact and reduce the risk. So those are the 4 opportunities there. And then finally, what you want to do is, once you've developed this mitigation strategy and you've listed all this stuff, you need to periodically monitor the risk to make sure that they're still there, they're correct, they have the right probability of cost and risk, et cetera, the right mitigation strategy, and you need to periodically update it. Number 7 is transitioning from purchasing to procurement. And this is really, as I said, looking at your supplier segmentation and automating procurement processes wherever possible, minimizing transactional purchasing, whether it's wherever possible, and that, where you've got low volume or specialty processes, et cetera. So you want to minimize that. You want to segment your suppliers based on your supply chain vision and strategy, which again, looking at your Kraljic matrix geography and supply chain supplier performance. Developing relationships with your critical suppliers. And this is depending on how critical they are, as to what level you want to make sure this is at, whether it's at your buyer level, your senior buyer level, or your chief procurement officer type level, as far as that's concerned. You want to make sure that those relationships are maintained and maintained well. You need to develop partnerships where you can with your critical suppliers as well, and looking at long-term relationships, looking at opportunities to develop joint ventures, et cetera. So the point being is that you want to keep your suppliers close. You can use this to improve existing products and also to develop new products. And then finally, implementing sales and operations planning, which I think that everybody on this call probably knows or is extremely involved in, or at least knows a little bit about. S&OP is a process in which a single plan is developed for use by sales, marketing, production, distribution, finance, and company executives. In other words, it's a monthly planning cycle that, and the goal is to balance demand and supply and provide one version of the truth, so that sales doesn't have its own plan, production doesn't have its own plan, et cetera. Everybody reads off the same sheet of music. It's a 5-step process. And again, it includes data gathering, demand planning, supply planning, a pre-S&OP meeting, and an executive S&OP meeting, so that each month, one version of the truth comes out. So those are the eight recommendations that I have for post-COVID world. But I also want to look at make another couple of comments here. I really believe that the most successful companies will make the paradigm shift and move from a profit first to a people first mindset, and really play the long game. In other words, stop dealing with profit first and focusing on quarterly returns and dividends, et cetera, but play the long game and really look at the fact that we're in this for the long haul. People don't start companies and say, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna start this company and then shut it down in 10 years. And nobody does that. I mean, but yet at the same time, if you look back on history, if you looked at the Fortune 500 that existed in 1955, only 12% of those companies are still around today in their known as those companies. And the thing is that, a lot of them became dinosaurs. And so that's one of the problems. They didn't play, they got, in a lot of cases, they just couldn't adapt and didn't adapt for whatever reason. This is really the result of transitioning to a vision of culture and true end-to-end visibility. Because if you take care of your employees and your customers and the environment, the profits will follow. I also believe that circular supply chains will gain importance and prevalence in society, because in order to fix the environment, we really must fix the economy and look toward a triple bottom line where we're taking care of people, planet, and profits, because the profits will be there. We need to also increase the level of employee engagement, because the vast majority of employees in any organization are not engaged in what they're doing. And what this does is this increases turnover and increases attendance problems. People are absent a lot, and it has a huge effect on productivity, dragging it down. And in fact, in the next couple of weeks, I will come out with a white paper that's sponsored by the Mavens, that supply chain Mavens, on productivity and its impact on world events and and the world economy. The face of companies are changing and resulting in major changes within their supply chains. Successful companies will be focusing on effectiveness versus efficiency. And I really believe that the new supply chain paradigm will be resilience plus agility equals adaptability, because companies in the future need to be able to adapt. Adapting is the ability to adjust to new conditions and environments, or modify, or have those be modified for a new purchase or a new purpose. Resiliency is the ability to withstand or recover from difficult conditions, and agility is the ability to change direction. So what you need to be able to do is, in order to adapt, you need to be both resilient and agile. The new supply chain paradigm, again, will address any challenge, change, opportunity, or threat. In addition, there's a couple other supply chain changes that include the fact that governments will provide incentives, subsidies, and mandates to ensure certain supplies of certain items. One of the things that recently came about as a result of this is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is improving and overall materials throughout the world, or throughout the United States anyway. And organizations will also shorten supply lines, nearshoring and reshoring. One of the results of this is the CHIPS Reduction and Science Act, which is bringing the ability of chip manufacturers back into the United States and developing incentives for that, because the most expensive chips, computer chips, are now all made in Taiwan. 95% of them are made in Taiwan. And that's a huge issue as far as where it's located and being that close to China, et cetera, is going to have an impact on situations. Visionary companies will revise their investment models in order to include expansion capacity, so that we don't run out of toilet paper, we don't run out of milk, et cetera, during the next huge supply chain disruption. However, there's always going to be a gap between the virtual and the physical worlds. And what I mean by that is that, investment cycles currently take years to happen, and as there's typically average of at least a 3-year timeline to implement ERP software or AI in nowadays. I mean, the cycle seems to take forever, and sometimes many times it's even longer than that. And so we really, really, really must try to narrow this gap, and by integrating the whole process and allowing things to happen faster, and that's going to happen by having better information and through digital transformation, et cetera. So with that, I thank you, and I'll open it all to questions. Joni, what have we got?
Great. So we've got a comment from Clark, and he is saying, in terms of publicizing results, I found it is critical to document the starting point for eventual comparison. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole process of making sure that you have continuous improvement, and really and that's where, again, you have your organization building trust, et cetera. What you really need to do is internally publicize these things from beginning to end, as you start a new project, et cetera, so that you can make sure that people understand what's happening, why it's happening, and both the positive and maybe some of the setbacks that are happening. People want to know what's happening in their organizations, and I think that that's key.
Very good. Thank you. Peter Murray, our friend, says, Gary, there's a lot of marketing out there now about having a tactical execution process. Isn't that really just an effective master scheduling process?
Well, Tactical implies getting down to the nitty gritty, whereas, and so, yeah, it sort of, I think you're on the right track there, Peter. It is sort of a master scheduling thing, but what you want to make sure of is, again, that you publicize it and that you keep people clued in as to what's happening and why it's happening.
Very good. Peter also is asking a tactical execution companion to either sales and operations planning or integrated business processes. And that just really an effective master scheduling process that has got dynamic communication looped back into S&OP via either a system or dialogue or both.
Again, I think you're right on the mark there, but the whole key to it is there always has to be a feedback loop. In other words, S&OP is not just coming up with one recommendation or one version of the truth, so to speak, but at the end of that process, you need to have the feedback to say, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? How do we do it better? So you're right, there should always be a feedback loop in virtually every process that you have.
Very good. Are there any other questions from our audience today? Please type them into the Q&A box. And while we are giving folks time to do that, Gary, do you want to go ahead and show a little sneak preview of what's coming up?
Yeah, here's just a couple of things here is if you come up with questions that you want to ask later, you can reach me at Gary S. at supplychainmavens.net. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already connected, and get me through the LinkedIn connections. And if you email me and ask for it, I'll send you PDF copies of both the presentation and the original supply chain management review article that it was based on. Also, just as an FYI, Joni Holman and I will be co-instructing a public CSCP certification class beginning May 17th. It will be it's scheduled from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time or Eastern Standard Time if it gets into that, but I don't think it'll get that far. It'll just be in Eastern Daylight Time. The class is going to be held weekly with maybe a couple of holes in it. In order to register, go to the Supply Chain Mavens website and click on this, and it'll give you all the instructions that you need. This is the Certified Supply Chain Professional certification class that will get you ready to be able to take the CSCP exam to become an APIC certified supply chain professional. And finally, if you want to read my columns and get the monthly Mavens newsletter, which is free, go to supplychainmavens.net and click on that. You can get to my different columns. Also, you can download the white papers that are there, etc., so that you can stay in touch. But I'd love to hear from you.
We got 2 more questions. So Ann Simmons Benton is asking, what about the circular economy and supply chains?
Well, that's something that I'm really interested in when we talk about circular supply chains. There's a lot of opportunity there to improve our overall economy and environment through the use of circular economy models. And I also see that as potential for another white paper in the future. But yeah, it's a great opportunity. You see it a lot now with I actually, one of the places that I saw it happening recently, believe it or not, is in the automotive area, because what Volvo is coming up with now is you can actually lease a car, and it basically it's one price, and that also includes the car, but it also includes insurance, all the maintenance, etc. The only thing you got to put in it is gas, or if or electricity, depending on which kind of car you get. But it's an interesting concept, because what happens is you can turn in a car every 3 months. Now, it might cost you something, but the opportunity is there, and I think that there's some great things to happen there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Perfect. All right. And one more question from Mr. Murray. Could you take a minute and talk about New York City and what they've learned about the supply chain and operations resilience, particularly with the transportation systems?
Well, interestingly enough, I guess, this goes back to the fact that I was vice president of supply logistics for New York City Transit for a number of years, and we're involved in that. And what happens there is they've also improved the life expectancy of buses and subways and rail cars through the use of their enterprise asset management program, which, the goal is to extend the life of those three modes of transportation, so that the average life of a rail car and a subway car is about 40 years. Well, the thing is, those subway cars, they went from mechanical to electronics to chips, etc. And so have buses. Buses have increased while they're a shorter time span. They're now up to like 12 to 15 years as far as that's concerned. But the thing is that they're what we do is we refurbish rail cars on a planned basis. We refurbish buses on a planned basis. We reuse and update the engines, the transmissions, the wheels, on a subway car, etc. All these things, a lot of these things are refurbished and and reused over and over again in order to lengthen the time that it's involved in dealing with it. So I think that we've done New York and a lot of organizations, a lot of transit companies around the world are really getting into the long-term use and reuse of their assets.
Excellent. That takes care of all of our questions, Gary. Do you have any closing words for us? We got about 2 more minutes.
Well, again, I think that I want to thank everybody for participating and signing up for this. And again, I think that if you're interested in becoming certified or taking part in some of the Mavens activities, whether it's CPIM, CSCP, or CLTD certification. The nice thing now is that they're all based on one exam, or each of them separate exams, but I mean they've each of the certifications have gone to a one exam format. There's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of opportunity in supply chain to expand your career, et cetera, by becoming certified, et cetera, and also by staying involved in what we're doing, as well as what ASCM is doing to add to the body of knowledge of the of supply chain.
Perfect. So there's one question here about how do we decide which certification is best for us? We're actually going to have future webinars on this kind of a topic. If you want to send either Gary or myself, Joni at supplychainmavens.net, we'll be happy to give you a table of what the different certifications are and who they are designed for. So thank you so much, everybody. We're going to sign off now. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.